here from Twilight Crafts. Happy International Scrapbooking Day, and I thought I would just have a go at making some mixed media backgrounds using distress inks and oxides, and I thought I'd explore the different properties of the two, and also then have a go at adding some foiling using my mink machine. So I thought I'd try something a little bit different today, because I absolutely love, one of my favourite supplies is the Vicky Boutin mixed media pads. I've got a few of these and they are my go-to if I don't want to make a mess. But I thought, well, I'll have a go at trying to recreate some of the mixed media techniques and foiling as Vicky has done here. So let's see how we get on. So just a few things in terms of the equipment I have is fairly simple, really. I like to use the 300 GSM white cardstock, the smooth cardstock. We do also stock the Vicky Boutin Foundations paper, which is great. So a really heavyweight cardstock is best because it will withhold water, heat, and lots of inks. I've also added texture paste and different things to create the mixed media background. So I've got a couple of sheets here. And then for the distress oxides and inks, I thought I'd stick with the blue colour palette. These are just the ones I have. So I've got Stormy Sky and Tumbled Glass in the distress ink. And then I've gone for Faded Jeans, Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock Feathers in the oxides. The one thing I would say, I don't mix the tools. So I've got a set of the rainbow blending brushes, which we have back in stock in the shop, and I've just washed those, so they are nice and fluffy. Even though they've stained, they come up brilliantly in the wash. But I keep those for oxides because they've got quite a chalky texture. And then for the distress inks, I generally use a blending tool, and then I tend to have, I've got a little bit of Velcro on the bottom so that I've got the coordinating pads on the bottom. And then because I store them in a little ink storage unit, I've just labelled the sides so I can access the colours easily. I haven't labelled the distress oxides yet, but I thought I'd just have a little play with some of the inks and oxides and look at the different properties, because I know some of you have asked the different properties. I also have, for my round blending tools, we've got a starter kit of these in the shop. Lots of pads. They do wash up, they do stain, but they wash up quite nicely. So if you've got a smaller surface area and you just want to make that small circular motion, I generally just hold it like that. I put my finger on the top so that I can tilt it, because you don't want a harsh edge. And I do like to use the round blending tools. The rectangular one's similar. I hold it in that sort of way so that I can angle it and not get a harsh edge. So there's definitely a bit of trying out with these tools, but they are well worth it because I equally love those and the blending brushes. Blending brushes are probably a little bit easier to get the hang of, but I tend to use these for my distress inks. Other bits of equipment I've got, so water sprayer, a little palette if I want to mix some inks to make some splats. I generally like to use a fan paintbrush to create little splats. I have my trusty, very well used heat gun. I always have a bit of acetate because I like to mix colours or drip and dab using acetate. And then for the mink machine, I've got my Heidi Swap mink machine, which I absolutely love. And I've got some deco foil, and then I've got this, which is brilliant. So I did get hold of this just from Amazon, but it's the E600 spray glue, and you can use it to foil. So I will show you that a little bit later on when we get on to the foiling. And then I've just got some stencils, very well used because I used alcohol inks on this and haven't cleaned it off. That's Vicky Boutin. And then I've got some of the other Vicky Boutin Fernwood stencils here, and I've got a kind of alphabet stencil that I thought I'd use. So let's have a go. Let's get some cardstock. So we'll start with the inks first. Inks, not chalky. They create lovely backgrounds. They react with water, so you can move them around. And it is best to kind of heat set so that you don't smear it around the paper. But I thought I haven't used this one yet. So this is in the Fernwood Greenery Stencils collection. And I even love the papers that they come in. The fern stencil I've used a lot to make backgrounds for scrapbook pages. So I thought I would try to have a go with this. So I thought I'd start with a bit of Stormy Sky first, and I'll get my rectangular tool. And the thing that I do like to do is very often you can see in the lid there's ink in there, because I don't like to waste ink, but I don't go straight from the ink pad onto the stencil because you can often get too heavy marks. So I generally take some of the ink, dab it off so that it's not too heavy, and then just start in circular motion. So depending on how new the ink pad is, will just depend on how much comes through. But I don't want any harsh lines because I want to make quite a soft background, and I am going to move it around. You can use washi tape to hold it in place if you like to. I'm generally a bit more fluid than that, because if it moves, it's kind of part of the design, and that's okay. I don't want it to be too neat because I'm going to add a bit of water. I'm going to add some drips and some splats. So I might put another little bit down here, but I just dab it off into the lid. And it can overlap a little bit. I might go in with a second stencil depending on how it looks. It's all a bit of an experiment. Sometimes if the backgrounds I make are too busy and I think, oh wow, it's a lovely technique, but it's just a little bit too busy for me, I then cut them up and I use them for Jenny Wren stencils. So I did a layout last week where I just cut it up into a sort of a cut file because it was a bit too much. Might do a little bit here. I might do a little bit up here because I'm not sure how I'm going to use it yet. Okay, so kind of like it in that kind of diagonal, so I might put a little bit up here. Yeah, and that looks quite neat to me. It needs messing up a little bit. So I quite like the idea of either going in with another stencil, so you could have a few colour wheels. Why not? Let's just try it and see how it looks. So this is a lighter. I've gone with tumbled glass now, so it's almost softer pattern. Let's see what we get. It might be too light, but we'll see. Now, because some of that Stormy Sky isn't heat set, it's moving a little bit, but that's okay. So it's creating a bit of depth. That's quite nice. I might do a little bit more up here. This stencil is very well used. Okay, and then what I'm thinking is, with probably a little bit more stormy sky possibly, I will make some drips because it's a bit clean. So for this, I generally get a bit of acetate and I press the ink down. I have actually got a Tim Holtz mixed media mat which works quite well, or just a messy mat. Oh, apologies, the light's just taken a dive bomb. There's a bit of shadow, so I'm trying to get it lit a bit better. So yeah, I've got a craft mat which is useful because I end up making quite a mess. So I just use it like a palette, and you can add a few little extra drips, and because it reacts with water, some of this will bleed a little bit. It's looking a bit too clean, so I might go back in and maybe add a bit more. I think Vicky Booting calls this the kissing technique, which I love. And she says, kiss it like it's your grandma, not the rock. So it's the gentle sort of technique. There's sometimes bigger drips, which gives quite a nice darker element, but I want it to be a bit messy. I'm trying to recreate some of her backgrounds. I'm sticking with the blue just because I'm going to go in with some of the gold foiling, so I don't want it to be too busy, and I want to be able to use it with some of my scrapbook papers, so I kind of want it to complement, but I definitely don't want it to look too formal. I want it to look a bit messy, but I quite like these darker drips. And if you let them dry like that, they'll obviously stay quite pigmented. But what I also like is a trusty bit of kitchen roll. Never stays in my kitchen for very long, because you can roll and lift some of it off. Or you can leave some of those darker pigmented pieces and you can just go in with a heat gun and dry it off. So that one, I think I'm quite happy with that for now, and I'm going to leave that to really set before I have a go at some foiling. But I just want to dry off some of these really wet pieces. Now this card withstands heat quite well as well. It does buckle a little bit, but that's okay, because when you run it through the ink machine, it flattens it out. And actually, I sometimes do that. If a piece of cardstock gets quite buckled from mixed media, once it's dry, as long as you're not using things like Dina Wakley gloss sprays, which you shouldn't apply heat to, then you can just run it through the ink machine in the carrier pocket, and that will just flatten it out. So that's the first one. So the next one, let's have a go with some oxides next. So I've got similar colour palette, so peacock feathers, faded jeans, and mermaid lagoon. Let's try something a little bit different this time. I haven't used this stencil yet, but this is a stencil I've had for a little while, and it's not even out of the packet yet. And it's text. I quite like text stencils. I do go back for my Caramel stencil a lot. This is one of my favourites. We're just about to get some restocks of those. So any that's got sort of repeating patterns or unusual patterns, great for a background. But I'm going to use my my rainbow blending tools this time. And a similar technique. I think I'll just do in the range of colours. I'll just put some of this across the background. Let's start with Faded Jeans. Now, I don't have lots of blue blending tools, so I'm just going to use the same one, and it will mix a little bit, but that's okay. So this one, much more chalky, and I think it still reacts with water, but I think the effect you get when it reacts with water is quite strong. So I'll show you in a minute the bleaching technique, where you can lift some of the background off. I just quite like the tones you get from the oxides. I have to say the oxides are probably the ones I go for the most, just because I like the texture it gives. You can also make it very, very soft. The inks are definitely more fluid, I guess, and they can be a little bit more translucent in how they apply on the page, but I like them both. They don't do the distress oxides in the smaller pads, but they do the inks in the minis, and the minis are just quite handy, really, because then you can have lots of colours across the colour range. Right, so that's in the Faded Jeans. Let's try maybe a little Mermaid Lagoon. Who knows what it will come out like. I've still got a little bit of Faded Jeans on there. I mean, I should have probably dabbed it off, but it's not affecting the ink pad too much. You can dab it off probably. That's quite nice because it's given a sort of almost like a two-tone. You've got a slight shadow, and I quite like that big M in the corner, so I'm going to get plenty of ink in there. And I think I'm going to foil both of these. So it's quite nice to make a few different mixed media backgrounds while you've got the stuff out, and then you can decide what you're going to do with them afterwards. So that's there. And then I think finally I will switch to this greenier brush because they have all been cleaned for the peacock feathers. But what is quite nice is another technique is with the ink here, you can spray this. I might do this in a minute on another piece of paper and actually have some of that lifting off. So let's go in with a little bit of the green. Yeah, I like that, layering it over a bit. That's nice. And maybe I want to fill this little gap here with some of these smaller letters maybe. Okay. So that is quite a wacky background. So yeah, let's get another piece of paper. Let's try and see what it might be like if we wet the stencil. Let me just get a few more sheets of white cardstock ready. So let's see if we ink this, if we spray this stencil. So plenty of water here, make that quite wet, and then have a go at doing the reverse and see what it comes out like. Oh, I like that, completely mirror image. So we don't want to waste anything. And I might even go one more there. So we could totally use that as a background or cut it out, use it for mounting. I quite like how the reverse of that's come out. And then I'd probably say, right, let's make it a little bit more interesting with, what was that? That was Mermaid Lagoon. filling some of the space and then probably lifting some of that off. So I can add more drips and splats to that. That's quite nice. And then once it's dry, I'd probably go back in with this stencil again and add some darker areas in those 3 tone on tone colours. And maybe a few more drips and splats. So we'll keep that and we'll let that dry out. But we'll come back to this one because that's a little bit clean for me. And let's see. So bleaching technique, which you can use on a full block of colour. If you were to ink around a cut file, for example, you could then bleach, or you can just use it on stencil. So I spray some water into my hand and then I just drip and flick. Some really good drips. Let it mellow and react a little bit. And then when you're ready, back in with your kitchen roll, and it kind of is lifting the ink and making quite a nice bleached mottled effect. So if you look on that M there, if the camera is going to pick it up, just adding a little bit of extra texture. And then say in this, I quite like this peacock feathers as a nice vibrant colour, to go back in with my little fan brush. I also sometimes like to use a teardrop brush. So a teardrop brush probably gives bigger splats. It holds more water, so you can go in and add more prominent. And the bigger teardrop brush you get, the bigger the splats, whereas your fan paint brush gives much more delicate splats. But then if you want big drips and splats and you want that pigment, I find the oxides are much more pigmented, then you get some really nice bigger drips. And of course you can where you want to. And the beauty with a longer piece of acetate is you can kind of bend it and position your splats where you want it and lift up some of those drips. But if you want to lift, sometimes I just lift the middle out. You just go with the flow, and if you want to remove some bits or add a bit more bleaching, say I need a little bit, I want this to be a little bit more mottled, you can go back in and lift. So I quite like that. I'm going to leave that again to dry so that we can have a go at some foiling. So we've got a couple of things drying, but this one has dried off now. So I'm going to move the inks out the way and show you a little bit, or at least talk you through how I have used the Mink machine to foil. I'm going to clear all this out the way, otherwise we're going to get in a right muddle. So the Mink machine I've got, I'm going to turn it on, and generally I set it to 3. So let me see if I can get this into the view of the camera. Just so Mink machine, I love it. I went on a scrapbooking retreat, and somebody was talking about the Mink machine, and then I realized I just had to have one. So they do a smaller version. This is the 12 by 12 version. It doesn't take very long to heat up. It's kind of like a scrapbook laminator, if you like, but you can use it for all types of foiling. You can get foiling pens. I generally don't find to get on so well with that, but you can laser jet print and then use the foiling. But what I like it for, because I make mixed media backgrounds, is I like to use adhesive. I have got Heidi Swap's Magic Medium as well, which I haven't played a lot with, but again, you can use that to foil. You could paintbrush with it. We'll try all the things. Let's try all the things. So the machine is heating up, and I'm going to move it to the side here so we've got a bit of space to work back on our layout. So this adhesive, generally designed for spraying, but I don't use the spray bottle. I use this to drip, and I generally just tap. And the thing is, I don't really know where it's going. I don't know what it's going to look like. I am going to give it a good shake though, because I haven't used it for a while, and I don't know if that might make a difference. So I'll give it a good shake. I can see there's a few drops here, but I want a few decent drops. Let's see, I can't really see where it's going, so I want to pick up plenty. So that we get a good amount of gold. So the key is you need to let that go tacky and dry off before we put it through the foil. So I'm going to work on another one of the layouts while that is drying, but you can hopefully see then the adhesive has gone into random drips and splats. And then what I'll do is I'll take the bits of foil, if I can get the lid off. You can get 12 by 12 sheets of foil, but generally I get smaller pieces, and I'm just going to lay them over and see how it goes. So there's that one. I'm going to leave that one to the side, and I'm going to go gold foil with that once it's dried off. But I'm just really keen to try a bit of foiling on this as well. I'm going to make sure I speed up the drying process on that. But you can see when people ask the difference between the oxides and the inks, although they're a different colour palette, they do give a completely different effect in how they ink. Right, so that is relatively dry. Let's just give it another quick dry, and if in doubt, dab it with kitchen roll. Still a little bit dry, still a little bit and then I've got different types of foil. Let's see what else I've got. I've got a drawer of foil. Let's try, so we could try a bit of silver on this one and see how the silver turns out. So I've got a roll of silver and a roll of gold. So on this one, what should we do? Let's try a paintbrush technique. I'm out of my comfort zone now, thinking, right, shall we go for some brush strokes? So I've got an old paintbrush because this is glue and it's not going to be very forgiving on paintbrushes. So I will wash it off once I've finished. Let's have a go. See what we might get. Who knows? And then a few extra drips. Right, that's quite a lot of glue on there, so I'm going to set that aside. Now I can't even, that's vibrating on the camera, the ink machine, so I've moved that there. Right, so I've got kind of, who knows how this is going to turn out. I've not done it with drips before, and look, you can, if I tip it like that, oh I love that, can you see that the glue is running down the page? I'm going to let that run because I'd quite like to see how that turns out. Now I'm going to set that aside. Come back to this one. Speed this up a little bit because I need it to be a bit tacky. Wouldn't advise heating it because you're probably not supposed to. That's don't do what I do, you'll be in trouble. Put the lid on. You definitely want it to dry off. Yeah, it is starting to go, oh yeah, you can feel that it's starting to go tacky. So one last blast. And while that is drying, I'm going to come back to this one. So this has dried quite nicely, and it does dry quickly. So that was the oxides. So I might then go back in with some more oxides, as I like working with them, maybe in these couple of tones. Faded Jeans is quite dark, but let's try. Let's do the colour wheel on this one then and see how. Let's go back to the ink brushes, the right brushes that we need for this. Let's go Mermaid Lagoon while the glue is drying, because we will be with bated breath waiting to see how the foiling turns out. And if it doesn't work, well, it was fun having a go. We shall see. But there's plenty of YouTube videos, ideas on how to foil. I have tried printing titles, for example, on my LaserJet printer, and then you just run those through the ink, get my words out, and that does create a nice foil title, which is quite nice. So maybe a little bit down here. I could just play with inks all day. I'm quite happy in my element playing with inks. There. And just because I love this stencil and I can't resist, I might just take little bits of it, because I just love it, and it adds a little bit more interest. Because I think if I've got a photograph here, it's quite nice to have a little bit of interest here. Not too much, otherwise it'll go just a bit wild. But maybe some of this here. Because my photo really is, it will be somewhere here, so it gives a little bit of interest. But what I also need, because I am a bit of a symmetrical person, I need to balance it up here a little bit. That's it. So that started to create that background a little bit, but I can bleach some of this again if I want it to be a bit more fluid. Lift some of it back off, or go back in with more splats. Yeah, that's nice. I don't want it to be quite as clean, so it makes it a bit more fluid. It's that kind of layout. Right, so I think our glue is going to be ready. We're going to give this a try and see how it turns out. So what I find is the bits of foil can be reused, because it looks like for a few splats you're using quite a lot of foil, but actually there will be lots of foil left over that you can use, because I've obviously only done drips and splats. So that is looking like it's dried fairly well. Some of this I'm going to lift because there's really big blobs, and it doesn't need to be quite that blobby, if that makes sense. Right, so I'm going to lay this over the layout, and I do need my carrier folder, which is just under here. So I bought the pack of Heidi Swap carrier folders, quite important to have. So I've got the actual 12 by 12 transfer folders, because you do need to heat protect when you run it through the ink. So here's the next piece. And the two pieces does protect. Right, let's see how we go. Now, it's all an experiment, because I might have let it dry too much. Who knows? I am learning as I go. That's what I love about this. If it doesn't quite work out this time, we have another go. But we obviously hope it works out. So we put it in the folder, and then that is on green, so it's showing that it is ready to go. And we're going to just feed it in through. Now, it does take a little while to go through, but it should be worth the wait, we hope. It will be the big reveal. Patience is a virtue. So while that is running through, I think that one's still got quite a little bit of drying on, because you can see it shimmering in. Yep, so I can see as it comes out, can you see where the glue drips were? I've got this on heat setting 3. You can always check it's adhered. You can always run it through a second time if it hasn't quite adhered in the way you want it to. Always better to do it a second time than overheat it. So let's see what. But this is how you can create your own Vicky inspired background. So I'm going to move this around this way as it comes out, and we shall see how it's worked. So I'll let that come right out of the machine. I'm going to put the machine to the side, because we will use that for the silver foiling. But let's have a look. So as you peel it back, this is the exciting bit. There's the first bit of foil come off, and you can see what I mean about you can use the foil again. And here is the next piece of foil. So love that. So that is all foiled. That is all adhered to the card. So that is with the gold foiling. So I think we are ready to try the silver. Loving that. Just want to touch it. And you can see where the middle of the glue here, I'm going to hold it right up. The center of the glue has come out. I actually really like that. Love it. Love it. Right. So that's that one. Okay. So here is the next one. So we said we'd try this with silver. Now this has got quite a bit more glue on, so who knows how it's going to turn out, but we are willing to try anything. I might just see. It's definitely, oh yeah, it's definitely tacky. So you want it to, you don't want the glue to be wet. So when I did this when the glue was wet, it was just too sticky and it got in a bit of a mess. So you want it to be tacky, but it doesn't need to be really wet. So that's why I'm lifting off any bits that are really wet. But you can see why you need 300 GSM paper, because it is holding the ink and that moisture really well. And when you shine the light, you can see where the big chunks of glue are. Right, so silver, let's try this. I haven't used this roll before, so I'm just unsticking it, and I'm going to cut this into pieces because this is one continuous roll. So bear with me while I just cut this piece to size. There's a lot of glue on here, so we're going to need quite a large. So I'm going to overlap that a little bit, and I do put it the shiny side up. Oh, you can see where it is starting to stick to the glue. And then the next piece, cut to size. Now, I'm not going to need all of that, but as you saw with the gold, you can reuse it. Right, so here we go. Okay, so I'm just adhering that down. Oh, and I've knocked the ink machine, knocked the camera. Okay, so that is going in. Now, this is overhanging, so I don't want lots of foil overhanging because it won't be within the heat resistant sheet. And we do not want to mess up the ink machine. So I'm trimming that off, and I'm going to trim off the sides. And then we're going to run it through the machine. Okay. Now, still overhanging here. I do not want, note to self, cut this down so that we do not get the machine melted. Right, we are good to go. Let's see how this comes out. I'm going to put it through. And let me just move that into view. And we'll see how it comes out. So, this one, I probably, I'm not going to foil just yet. I kind of like that as it is. I think I can make use of that. This one, fascinating, because you'll be thinking, right, which way should I use it on a scrapbook page? I kind of see it going that way. But I love how that's turned out. And then let's just finish with the silver and see how it might turn out. So yeah, once you get the hang of foiling, the possibilities are endless. I quite like the idea of with the magic medium or the glue, dipping it in and trying to sort of script write in a scribble. That's my next technique to try. So if any of you watching have tried foiling and have got any ideas, do share them on the group. Right, we're nearly done. I can see it has definitely held on to some of those drips. So I am going to turn the machine off because that's getting warm. I'll move that out the way, stop that buzz, and here we go. So now this is where learning curve, letting the glue dry is important. You see it's still tacky, so that is the learning curve. The foil lifts off if your glue is tacky. So that is peeled off just a little bit, not quite as I'd hoped, not quite as good as the blue, as the gold. It's been okay on the upper half. Still nice, can definitely still work with that. It's where the glue is heavy, it's lifted slightly, but that's okay. That's funky. So yeah, you can definitely learn from my mistakes. Let that glue go really tacky. Just set it aside and let it go tacky before you foil it. So that is us done. There are the 3 scrapbook layout backgrounds created using distress oxides, distress inks, and foiling. So thank you for joining me, everyone. Happy International Scrapbooking Day. We'd love you to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and to join our Facebook group Twilight Crop and Craft, and share all your projects with us. Thanks, everyone.